That's a sobering finding from a new Stats Can report. It found that police reported hate crimes rose by 5% in 2015 to 1,362. The jump was largely attributed to a 48% increase in incidents motivated by hatred of race or ethnicity. Those directed at Canada's Muslim populations rose by 61% from the previous year. Joining me now from Ottawa with more on this is Amira Al-Gawabi, Communications Director for the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Good morning. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, Marcia.
What was your first reaction when you saw this report from Stats Can?
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't too surprising, Marcia. 2015 was a difficult year for Canadian Muslims. We actually had a federal election campaign where Muslims were discussed in a very negative way. If we recall, there was the debate around a woman who wanted to wear the face veil at a citizenship oath. That became sort of the central election issue for the former Prime Minister, Mr. Harper. We also saw a discussion around barbaric cultural practices. We saw issues around unfortunate terrorist attacks overseas in Paris twice. And so unfortunately, whenever we see all of these types of factors at play, what happens is that on our streets, on our buses, in our public transit, in our schools, in our work settings, that there is unfortunately a bit of negativity that will come up. And the worst case scenario is when you actually see hate crimes perpetrated against vulnerable communities.
Okay, so these numbers are from 2015. You've done a great job outlining the reasons why, in your view. What do you think 2016 is going to look like? Do you think that there have been improvements in terms of tolerance?
Well, I mean, 2016 was also a difficult year, and here into 2017, we have the election campaign of Donald Trump south of the border has been giving license to those who hold sort of anti-immigrant, racist, sexist views to sort of come up. We're seeing a growth of right-wing extremism here in Canada. So unfortunately, the picture isn't getting rosier, but I think what's really important to really emphasize to you is that Canadians, by and large, really, of course, oppose this type of hatred, any type of hatred at any community. We see that the Black community, for example, is still the #1 most targeted community when it comes to hate crimes, and there will be intersections. There will be Black Muslims and Blacks from other communities as well. So there are various communities. The religious community that is most targeted is still the Jewish community, and then the Muslim community is, again, rising. So all of these things really emphasize to Canadians that we really need to come together on these issues, and also for all levels of government, we need more funding to address this in various ways.
It's interesting we're even having this conversation because I think a lot of Canadians see themselves as open and tolerant. That's the sort of society that we live in. And yet, when you look at these numbers and we listen to you, it's certainly a different story. Do you think it's something that needs more discussion? Are we not open enough about this in Canada?
Well, first, I think we have to say that Canada is still one of the most safest, best places to live for all of us, right? We see that many of us are still able to participate in our communities and to contribute very positively. What we are saying is that, look, hate is out there and it can manifest in terrible ways. We saw 6 men, shot dead at a Quebec City mosque in January. We see on a day-to-day basis, reports coming in. Now, is this the vast majority of experiences? No, it is not. But we are raising the flag that, look, we need to address this. We need to come together. And that we need to admit, yes, there are racist views and attitudes. Public education is key. When we look at the numbers, what actually was quite surprising is that when it comes to targeting religious communities, the majority are coming from perpetrators under the age of 18. So that's quite important to emphasize, because that means that we need to do more in our schools, for example, to talk about racism, to talk about anti-oppression, to talk about Islamophobia, that these are issues that we need to be tackling. Anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Semitism. I mean, there's so many different marginalized communities that are discussed in this report. So that's really what we need to do, is identify that and figure out, how are we going to keep our communities as safe as possible and address this phenomenon, which is growing, but is still not at a critical point. We can still do more to sort of keep it at bay and hopefully help eradicate it.
Okay, thank you for articulating all of that for us. Amira, always good to see you. Amira Al-Gawabi, appreciate your time joining us this morning from Ottawa.